For a long time, I prayed for wisdom. God, give me wisdom. Because it says, like in Proverbs, it says, ask for wisdom and God will give it. And one day I realized that God is giving me wisdom, but I'm not acting on the wisdom.
Welcome back to the Dataliction Podcast, where we learn from leaders whose experience and faith shape how they grow their companies on purpose. Today, Travis and I welcome Wesley Mast. He's the president of Coppes Napanee, one of America's oldest cabinet makers, 150 years old in a town that's just 2 years older. His family actually bought the company to restore a legacy instead of chasing something new. He has a degree in sign language that has really trained him to hear what no one else says out loud. This conversation is about the weight that leaders feel that no one else sees, and it's about the courage to ask. Even includes a story about a letter to a college football head coach. So let's jump into that conversation.
I think a lot of the weight that I feel comes from the fact that as a leader organization, so we're only 25 employees. I've got about 20 plus dealers, so I tell people I manage, oversee, interact with about 50 people. And every individual has an opinion and their opinions are valid. So like from my perspective as a leader, a Christian leader, I value individuals as people. And then I also I have a responsibility to make this company successful at a certain level. So when you start combining all those things, there's a lot of things, voices and opinions and input from 50 different places or, sources. And from the outside, I think it can appear like, oh, you're running a custom cabinet shop. Here's your process, your system. And yes, that is true, but people don't see that next layer behind it, have all those things coming in. And as a Christian, and I think this is where the weight I put on myself as a believer is that I value these people. There's a reason those people have the opinions they do. They have the reasoning. And so I feel like it's my job to hear them out. And it creates a lot of voices that can sometimes make it hard to make decisions, because as you hear people out, you come to a point where you start realizing somebody's not going to like the decision I make. Because when you boil all those things back, I need to make one decision that's best for the company. Because this company's not going to grow by having each individual being its own little way of doing things, because no one knows what's going on then here. So I've got to funnel it back to like, okay, this is the way Coppes is going to do it and serve the market. And some are going to like it and some aren't. And navigating through that is something I find challenging, because some people are going to love it and some people aren't going to love it. But so it's a lot about building that trust with my, I'm going to say, audience, that I have their best interest in mind, even when it doesn't always feel that way. So that's the challenge, is to hear people out and understand when you're listening to them that you may not actually be able to provide exactly what they want, but you want to, and just to build that trust. Because I think just in my community, people just see a company, a leader, and 25 people, and how hard can that be? Right. So there's just like this another layer that I've discovered beyond just here's a company. It's all these opinions and voices. I mean, I didn't even talk about like all the vendors that are trying to sell you things. Everybody has an opinion, right? Yeah. And everybody has their opinion, and I respect that, but yet I need to bring it back to what is the truth for our company.
You are valuing people beyond what they do, and the judgment that they bring, the perspective that they bring. That, and then if you absorb those perspectives, that's a pretty tremendous weight. Do you have a sense of, you said responsibility, several times. I appreciate that. Do you feel like you are absorbing all those perspectives because it helps you as a leader, or are you trying to protect other people from knowing that weight? What is your perspective on, you're taking on all these opinions and then making the right decision? How do you even do that?
I think it comes down to just being transparent with the people and letting them know into the weight a little bit. Like I try to ride that line of like not just avoiding the weight and the pressures I feel, but also not completely getting them involved in things that they're not needing to be involved, and try to ride that line really well. Because I've found that like they understand some of it when you just frankly tell them that I hear you. I'm also getting these opinions. I'm getting other opinions that don't match. And just please understand, I'm weighing out the best options for our business and a company. And because if I don't necessarily agree with, I shouldn't say agree, if I don't necessarily do exactly like some of what you're asking or thinking, doesn't mean I don't value you as a person. And I've learned to just say it frankly, like that's what's going on. And I can't say it any better way than just telling them this is the battle I'm facing. So I often let my people in to some of that, not the actual weight of it, but just introducing them to the weight that is there on this, and that I don't take it lightly.
Wow.
And so I found out when I let them into that, in that transparency, they're a little more okay with the outcome, whether they agree with it or not.
How do you differentiate when to bring those people in? So sometimes, as you know, I'm starting up different companies and I've got new leadership. It's easier for some at the very beginning, but then later, as you continue to scale, how do you know when to have those conversations and when to help? Some people would say, I'm trying to protect my employees. What is that litmus test for you?
Not a great answer, but my gut.
That's fair.
There's kind of this, I grew up a little bit with the sixth sense of what people are, telling me without their words. And so what I don't think is mentioned anywhere is I actually have a degree in sign language interpreting.
Oh, wow.
So, for a while, I had a license in the state of Indiana to interpret for deaf people who use ASL. And through my training and my education on that, it taught me how to listen to words, but then read the room, read the context, understand that there's a lot more in communication beyond the words being said. And so, like I said, it's just kind of like this intuition I think sometimes I have that something's not right. I need to like explain more, or and I think that's actually then the challenge I do face is the opposite of that. Is it sounds like I do that well. I don't always do that well. So what happens is I can pick up on that, and as a leader, then it sometimes makes me want to hide because I can feel it and I can read it and I can understand. So sometimes when it gets too overwhelming, I have to pull back from being around people because it's just more. And I don't like that. Like I'm trying to work through that, but I can tell when I'm getting overwhelmed. My litmus test is how I'm retreating from people. I start retreating away from the people because I know they want some answers or they want to be heard and their stuff. And I'm like, my cup's full. I can't take anymore. And I can't walk into a room and not do it. And so I wish I was better at that, but then also that's kind of where I started to say like, okay, if I'm retreating for people because I can't take more in, that's my cue. I need to communicate something, because if I just retreat away, avoid, they start picking up on that and wonder what's wrong. And not everybody has the ability to see through that or understand the being overwhelmed or the pressures. And so that's when we have a Monday morning meeting every week where I kind of lead the team in prayer, tell them what my week's like, just trying to give them an update. And that's why sometimes I'm like, hey guys, this week, like I'm probably going to have my door closed. This is what's going on. Just understand. I might be on the phone a lot. Like I try to give that, but then I don't necessarily lead them into the specifics of what it is. And just that's how I navigate it. And does that answer the question?
Yeah.
I am continually amazed at the superheroes who have to turn off their superpowers regularly. And I love your explanation of the sixth sense and how you really have the ability to understand things in a room that most people will it'll pass them by. But because of that superpower, you are I remember watching a Superman movie once, and he's sitting up there listening to all of the things going on in the city, and eventually has to turn it off because he's like, I can't just listen to all these things that I can't help with. And your self-awareness of saying, I feel this way, that's step one. Step two of you communicating to that team is incredible. I've been on the other side of that, on both sides, of a leader that I knew something was going on and they didn't know it themselves. They didn't communicate it themselves. And then I've also been on the other side where the leader said just what you said. And so thank you, Wesley, for that, because being self-aware, saying something, it helps the whole team be able to trust you more. Back to the superpower concept of being able to read things and trust things, in looking at your story, I would say it's a superpower that you started doing what you're doing at all. If people want to look into you and your story, they need to, because y'all jumped in, with your family to turn a company around, which a turnaround is totally different than starting something from the ground up. To me, that terrifies me. And so help me understand, how did you decide to turn something around? What were the factors you were looking at? Did you use other sixth senses? Tell us a little bit about that story, Wesley.
So I would say I'm a little bit different in how I see entrepreneurship and innovation, in the sense that I see what exists more than I think I see what doesn't exist. And so what I do is I see what exists and say, what can we do with this? And I invent and create within the scope of what I can see. So when you bring that sixth sense in, I'm a problem solver. So you have that sixth sense and you're a problem solver and you like to experiment and new things. And I can see how all of that comes together. Is I hear a problem, I need to fix it. I have too many of them, I'm overwhelmed. Yet I love doing those things, right? But I have a capacity. So with Coppes, when you just stop and look back at the history, right now, marketing is all about story brand. That story. There was a story right there. Nobody had to create it. It was already created. It's such a rich history of innovation, leading the market, and longevity. And so, first of all, I see all of that's available to me to do something with. I don't have to go create it. I just get to bring it, together and reimagine it. So there's just a lot of stuff that was already going on. So there was a name, there was a brand, there's a story, there was a quality, and it just needed someone to come put it back together. And so I get super excited about doing a little bit. I feel like our today in our world, everybody just wants that brand new thing, that shiny object. This is kind of something old that I'm like, we have like I said, the legacy, the history, the family name. Our country was built around a lot of this. We were here for 150 years. Our town is only 152 years old. So our town and our company are synonymous in how they grow.
Amazing.
And so I would rather come and keep reviving what's there and bring that back to life than thinking I need to make there's plenty of people trying to come up with the next greatest invention. I'm not against that. I need it in our business, but there's something special about just restoring it. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question or not, but it feels like it caters to more of who I am and how I think, than to just start something brand new. And I get bored. Really quick. So this doesn't keep me. The company itself and doing all this definitely doesn't keep me, or doesn't let me get bored.
I'm curious, how are you surrounding yourself with other great leaders or great people to help kind of keep you, encouraging you and tethering you? So it sounds like you've got, that visionary type of perspective. What is it what are those people that you surround yourself with to help you energize you?
It comes back to the word courage. a friend and of mine, a connection, mentioned one time saying, just have the courage to ask. So this doesn't have to be the podcast, but basically what I did, I wrote a letter to Marcus Freeman and said I would love to sit and learn about him for 30 minutes. Will he ever reply, respond? Will he ever see the letter? I don't know, but at least I put the courage out to do it. It sounds silly. It sounds like I'm a teenager, but no, I believe he has something really, really special in the way he's leading. And I would love to learn from him. I don't get to learn from him if I don't ask. So that's just an example. I use that example to say there's plenty of people around me that absolutely will take my call, my text message, my email, and say, yes, absolutely, I'll meet. And they challenge me to say, show up to the meeting with an allotted time that you're asking for, with more questions that they can fill and they can answer in that time. And so that when they walk away, they know you came prepared and you didn't just waste their time. So it's a lot about just the courage to ask. And so there's people in our community who are growing businesses, who've been here where I've been at. They're starting, I try to surround it with all ages and stages, but a lot of it comes back to just asking people. And the courage came from asking people in my industry. And that took a ton of courage. Essentially, I asked competitors if they would be willing to sit down and let me learn. And that takes unbelievable courage. But guess what? It can be no. And I'm back to square one, or I can assume no.
You've lost nothing.
I have not been turned down. I have yet to be turned down. And they become my greatest fans. They literally, I walked away from one of them and they were like, I consider you a friend. I will do whatever I can to help you. And we have been in touch and it keeps happening. And I say, I'm going to do this for anyone else. Like if anyone asks me, I want to do the same thing. So I'm part of C12, which I think you and I talked about. Travis is C12. I'm part of that. So that group is very good for me. But then recently it's really like, whose opinions do I value the most? And there's a ton of opinions out there. There's a lot of people who have run businesses and done it their own way, but it really comes close to home when I can find guys who are doing what I am doing or have done what I've done. And that's the cabinet business. And so I've just been asking people in the cabinet business, would you have time to talk? Would you be able to give me some insight on this? And that takes a ton of courage. Got over that. Once I got over that, I realized like the benefits of it are huge. And they've been giving me, I've just been so grateful for that because I can't say enough about those people. Really, a lot of them are competitors, yet are willing to teach me what they know.
The formula for courage is often not a binary switch where you just, I'm going to be courageous. I do find it fascinating that I was asking what superpower might you have had to say, I think we can turn this around. I would say that's courageous. But as I'm listening to your story and applying that against my own experience of times I have been courageous, I would not consider myself a courageous person, but I have had moments of this. The steps toward being courageous often starts with humility. Because what keeps us from being courageous, at least with asking someone incredible like Marcus Freeman for sitting down, is my willingness to look a little silly. And that's the price I'm willing to pay for the upside of maybe a yes. And certainly with all these people you're sitting down with, we cannot know how to get where we want to go if we've not been there yet. And if other people have been there before us, we have to ask them. And again, the only thing that we are risking in that moment is maybe looking a little silly. But speaking for myself, feeling a little silly is terrifying. So I have to be humble enough to say, I'm okay with not being able to make it there. Travis, what are some of the ways that you have seen, courage in your own experiences with business? You've done so many different things. Would you use that word courageous? Would you use a different word, Travis?
Oh, I would absolutely use that word. And funny enough, what always comes to my mind is the movie We Bought a Zoo. And it's where you're like, oh, you just need to have 5 seconds of courage in order to ask, or it was 20 seconds or something like that.
Wow.
And that was the whole like movement. And I think what really takes courage is that movement. And then also there's a lot of trust that you're like, hey, what's the worst that can happen? Are they going to take your birthday away? No, they're not. So, you just kind of, and then I'm off, and I think about is that you don't get what's necessarily always fair. You get what you negotiate. You get what you ask for, not necessarily what, you always deserve. And so therefore you have to put yourself out there. And I think about it this way, that as I was, growing other companies, and as we were leaning into situations, I'm like, there's a lot of people relying on me in order to put myself out there, and I don't want to let them down.
Yeah.
And at first, we were, when I think about it as for having children, at first I was really scared having one. Then I was like, oh, okay, well, this isn't so bad. Then we had two. And we're like, oh, okay. I was nervous at first, but then I'm like, okay, we can support that. And then we had three, and we stopped at three. But it is one of those things where you realize you're like, well, it's not so bad. Okay. And Wesley, I know we were talking earlier. You're with a 2-month-old right now. So I'd love to hear what your as what grew you into writing that letter. What was the growing moment for you? Or maybe was there a time that you realized like, I'm glad I did that and it wasn't so bad?
Yeah. I think I did it once, and I think I was surprised by the response I got. And that one response just said, let's do it one more time. Like back to your, like it's increments. Like if I can do it one time, I can do it again. And it really took that first one. And you're right, John. Like it takes being a little bit silly or being scared of looking, different. But like you guys are only like the first people I'm telling that I wrote Marcus Freeman a letter. So I'm really putting it out there.
Hey, I love that.
So that's me looking silly. Like, hey, I mean, I think this just came to my mind, but I think this is where it started. Back in September 11th, 2021, after the whole 9/11 incident, I wrote a poem and I sent it to President Bush. That was it. Months later, I received a letter in the mail and a full 8x11 photo of President Bush signed. Probably his auto pen or whatever, signing it.
This is the best story we've had on the podcast so far.
So at that same time, my school, I went to a private school, sent a letter as a school. And I remember the school did it. Of course the school did it. Of course the school got a response because the school is a school. It's an institution, right? And I just remember the unbelievable pride I had of walking into school with my own letter. Like it was to Wesley. And I think that's where it started is like, I think it was my mom. I was the only one that I told. I was like, I want to do this. So, go into all the letters I didn't get responses from. But it's just that one step at a time. And I really think that's where it started is it showed me sometimes that if you just do and just ask, you'll be, it's easy for us as people, especially me, to underestimate the response that someone might give me. And like, why would they have time for me? Or why would they care? Why would this? But sometimes like, let's put myself in, I'm going to use Marcus Freeman, for example. The world or the country idolizes him and thinks he's the greatest coach. How many people take the time to just see him as an individual and a person, right? And that's, I think, what I long for as an individual is, yes, as the company grows and there's more going on, people can then put you in this place that's not actually real. Like, oh, you got your act together. You got it figured out. You must have answers for all this. And reality is, I'm just over here trying to be courageous every day. Right. And I think those are sometimes the disconnect back to like that weight of leadership is there's a disconnect, I think, from what people see and the courage that I have to wake up with every morning. And I choose to do that. And then we always just go to the success stories. And that's why I'm willing to say, I wrote President Bush a letter and I got a response. I wrote Marcus Freeman a letter. I did not get a response. Here's the point. We need both of those stories when it comes from leadership. And too often we're not talking about this because it does make us look silly. And so for a long time, I prayed for wisdom. Like, God, give me wisdom. Because it says, like in Proverbs, it says, ask for wisdom and God will give it. And one day I realized that God is giving me wisdom, but I'm not acting on the wisdom. And so in my journey, I've learned to say, God, give me wisdom. God, give me the courage to act on the wisdom. And that what I love about like God, what God's doing in my life as a leader is that he's created a foundation and these prayers keep building off each other. Like I'm excited to find out like, what's the next part I'm not thinking of? Like it's give me wisdom, give me courage. What's the next portion that he's going to put on there when I'm ready? I don't know what that is, but can I faithfully live out the wisdom and the courage? And these building blocks just keep building. And so I tell people, I'm highly involved in our youth group and mentoring youth. And a lot of times when I just tell them, and it's like, I tell them, I didn't know this at your age and I don't expect you to know it. But every year I learn more and more about the faithfulness of God. And if I'm just faithful and courageous today in my business relating to people, not every day is glamorous, but if I'm faithful, the trajectory of that is just unbelievable. Like where the life I get to live today is far beyond what I ever dreamed or hoped for, but also looks completely different than I ever dreamed or hoped for. But I love it. I love it.
The fear of looking silly is only existing in our own minds because I'm telling you right now, Wesley, as I hear you share these stories, you do not look silly to me. You look inspiring. And I can guarantee you there are so many people that are going to hear that you stepped out and did this thing wishing that they had done that thing too. And I found every time that I do something courageous or I see someone do something courageous, we always are inspired by that. We never think that person's silly. The only person that thinks they're going to look silly is the person who just did the thing. And so it's so amazing to get out of our own heads. And then the other component, I'm going to bring humility back into this concept of being courageous, is we often decide for other people what their decision is for them by not giving them the choice. And how prideful is it for us to decide, oh, I know they're going to say this, so I'm going to say no for them instead. And so to be courageous is to be humble enough and in multiple ways. It's courageous to say, I need something. I want something. I'm going to put myself out there and be humble enough to say, I have a void that I want filled. So I'm not everything. I need help. And then now I'm going to put myself out there, even though I'm going to feel like I could be silly, to be able to gain this. I would love to hear, as we're kind of wrapping up for today's episode, let's say you do sit down with Marcus Freeman, because once you finally do, I want that podcast episode with you. But do you have the first question? You seem like the kind of guy that's going to be already prepared. What's question number one that you ask him?
How do you deal with the pressure? Everyone's talking, the media, everyone's talking, and you have an expectation put onto you by the university. You have an expectation by the players, the media. So you then have to put expectation on yourself as well. How do you set your own expectation of what's real for yourself? In light of all that you hear, see, whether you block it out or listen to it, he has an expectation that he sets in a bar for himself somewhere. How does he set that? And because he's got to have a goal. And where's that goal? Or how does he set that? So that'll probably be the first question, because I can't imagine what it's like to be on that level. And I think he's humble in just how he handles it. I mean, you hear people say Notre Dame went from being unlikable to likable, and they say it's because of Marcus Freeman. That says a lot about a person.
Wisdom and the courage to act on it. Wesley's prayer is actually throughout this whole episode in that line. The weight of 50 voices in your team, that letter to Marcus Freeman, a 150-year-old company brought back to life, one courageous ask at a time. Our conversation actually ran extra long today. There was just too much good in there. So to Wesley, consider this your open invitation. We would love to have you back for an even deeper dive. Thanks for your honesty, your story, your time, and best of luck for that day when you do indeed sit down, Coach Freeman at Notre Dame. We want that episode. To the rest of you who are listening, thanks for being here again for this episode of the Dataliction Podcast. Wesley builds by restoring what already exists, and your business works the same way. The numbers, the customers, the story, it's all already there, just spread across a pile of software that was never built to fit together. So at Dataliction, our team actually helps you put it all back together in one place. Your own all-in-one platform that's designed around the way your business actually runs, instead of the everything for everyone everywhere approach that's often it costs less to put it all together than to leave it all separate in those big piles. So go to dataliction.com, book a free call with our team, and have the courage to ask.